All right, so following up the recent Mueller hearing, now that I've posted quite a few videos on that lovely scenario that played out yesterday, it was not. Let's call it for what it is. It was a disaster, it was a catastrophe, and it was one big, gigantic fiasco. So I hope you all enjoyed some of my more comedic intros to some of the videos I've made on that in the last day or two. We're going to touch on the FISA court. As I brought that up in one of the videos, that there was the FISA warrant for Carter Page, which vicariously it was allowing them to spy on the entire Trump campaign. Okay? Now, the FISA court was established in 1978. Okay? But the whole concept that we know about today, post the Edward Snowden releases, that whole concept that we really know about today really ramped up after the 9/11 attacks, thanks to George W. Bush. Imagine that. Something else Bush did that was just so great. As I've said on this channel before, not a fan of George Bush Sr., or Jeb Bush. Not a fan of the Bush family. Just something about them. They're what I consider the typical, status quo swamp type politician, and they most certainly are not a representative of the people, in my opinion, from either political party. Okay, they're the double talking, double dealing type of person that I don't want in office. Okay. That being said, George Bush was responsible for the Patriot Act, which, by the way, had support from Hillary Clinton. And who continued the Patriot Act? Barack Obama. Okay, so, again, this is the independent report. This is not the Republican report. This is not the Democrat report. I will call out problems on both sides where I see them. And I do believe that, in all honesty, even though there are a lot of issues in today's world that I am with the Republicans on, and there are some that I still agree with the Democrats on, okay, overall, we need a third party, and we need a strong third party in this country, because our Bill of Rights has been getting walked on by both sides for so long, and it's out of control. And the bad part is there are so many people who don't realize just how badly that their Bill of Rights is being walked on, because when they turn on the news, the only thing they hear about and the only thing they really see or pay attention to is crap like Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal. I mean, the news does not inform the people on what they really should be informing them on. They're doing this. They're blindfolding you, people. They're blindfolding you. They're blindfolding you, and they only will tell you what they want you to hear, but you're blindfolded so you can't see what they don't want you to know. If that makes any sense. I'm sure that probably sounded like some kind of a difficult riddle. But no, you can't see anything, so you can only hear what they're telling you. They tune you in, and then they just feed you the status quo propaganda, whether it be from the right or the left, because they both have corrupt people at the top. I don't care if you're on the Republican Party, you're on the Democrat Party. They are, in a lot of ways, two sides of the same coin when you get down to the corruption. Pure and simple. Pure and simple. And so we need a good third party in this country that really can shake things up. Not Democrats or Republicans. I know there are a lot of people who thought that taking over the Republican Party would be a good idea. In a lot of ways, Trump did do that with the Republican Party. He definitely came in and shook things up. I'll put it this way. I was no fan of Mitt Romney either. Now, I did support Ron Paul. Okay? I did support Ron Paul. Ron Paul had the right idea on foreign policy. Mitt Romney, just like McCain, just like Bush, and it's because of people like him, and on the Democrat side, people like Obama, who ran for one thing and got elected and did something completely different, that you keep getting more and more division within the country, and then you start to get more people who come out as an outsider. And people, it's like these big parties that can't understand why some of these outsider candidates have so much traction behind them. It's not hard to understand. It's not hard to understand one bit at all. It's because people are sick of the status quo. Okay? And there are a lot of people who are starting to wake up to realize what's going on in the world around them. However, there are some who still have the blinders on, and they can't see. They can't see when our Bill of Rights are getting walked on. They can't see. And obviously this is a touchy one for the left. They don't, a lot of the left wants to push back and say, oh, we need more gun control, this and that, and we're not taking your guns away. But that's not exactly true. Because a couple of years ago, it was just all we want's the AR-15. But then more and more people have came out and admitted, no, they want a little bit more than that. Okay? Recent Democrat debates, a good chunk of them all support a gun buyback program. They want the guns out of the hands of the people. And there has been one common denominator in this country where that has always happened. Well, excuse me, not in this country, but all around the world. There's one common denominator. When they come for the guns, they're coming with tyranny. They don't let you see it up front, but it's coming. Mao did it in China. Castro did it in Cuba. Okay? Stalin, Hitler, they all seized up guns and restricted them from the people. Okay? When Ferdinand Marcos declared himself a dictator in the Philippines, he gave the people X amount of hours to come turn in their guns. Why? Because you can't defend yourself. Now, something that the left tries to come back with on that whole argument is that, rifles can't compete against tanks and whatnot and this and that. True, you're outgunned, but if you think we can't make a stand, go back and look at Vietnam. Go back and look at what happened in Vietnam. The Vietnamese people were able to make one heck of a stand, and they didn't have the kind of artillery we had. And last I checked, we ended up pulling out of that war. So, the point being is, if we're armed to some extent, they can't completely force everything down on us. It can't happen. It's not gonna happen. Okay, the people have the capability of defending themselves to some extent. There would be a massive war in this country. Whereas if you have no arms, so they don't want to make it seem like there's a big massive war. But if they did start imposing more tyranny on the country, you've got no way of protecting yourself. So there's the Second Amendment. Okay, there's the Second Amendment. And now you see a lot of the censorship that's going on. More and more voices being shut out. Right or left, doesn't matter. There's more and more censorship going on. Social media, online, or even out in the public in general. There's more and more censorship. There's the First Amendment. There's attacks on the First Amendment, okay? The FISA court and the Patriot Act absolutely stomped all over the Fourth Amendment. And that's what this video is about. Trampled on it. Okay? And then as a result of what happened after 9/11 with this Patriot Act, even though the argument has been that these are not American citizens, we opened up Guantanamo Bay. The Bush administration wanted the military to carry out the waterboarding on the people who were in there. They refused to do it because it violated, their code. So we had the CIA carry it out. So we started torturing. And even though the argument from a lot of people I've heard on the right was that, they're not American citizens. But you look at how we waterboarded people. Okay, you look at how we waterboarded people. We took a guy who confessed he was involved with 9/11. I don't remember if it was the same guy or not, but it could have been. I know there was someone else we waterboarded a ton of time to get him to confess that Al-Qaeda was connected with Saddam Hussein. And we waterboarded these people endless amounts of times until they said yes. Now, I want you to think about this for just a moment. For all the people who deem waterboarding so effective, and because it's being done the correct way, non-lethal, let's just examine that for one moment, shall we? If it's so effective and it's so useful, why don't we do it to people when they get arrested to see what they know? If someone gets arrested and it turns out they're part of, I don't know, some big criminal element within this country, and we want to know what they know, why don't we waterboard them? Why don't we find out what they really know? This is a non-lethal form of interrogation that's apparently so effective. Why don't we waterboard them? Just put a bag over their face and just dump the water. Why doesn't that happen? I'll tell you why it doesn't happen. Because it violates your right, protects you against cruel and unusual punishment. It violates it. Okay? You know, the 8th Amendment protects you against cruel and unusual punishment. There they go stomping all over that. Now, again, they're going to say it hasn't happened to an American citizen. But so what? So what? So we're going to do it to other countries? You know what that makes us? A war criminal. A war criminal. You realize after World War II, we executed Japanese generals. Sentenced them. Okay? That we deemed war criminals for the way they tortured POWs. Now, to be fair, people try to say, oh, they did a lot more, harsh things. I've heard putting bamboo shoots underneath the fingernails and stuff. Very, very grotesque things. And that might be true. But then again, we've done other things besides waterboarding too. Keep pouring cold water all over people and leaving them in rooms. There's various forms of tortures that we used at Guantanamo Bay. And what's one thing that Obama ran on? Closing Guantanamo Bay. Yeah, well, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. Okay? So they're trampling all over your rights. Okay? And there's one thing that I think is more important than anything else that I'm going to put up at the end of this clip that I want people to look at. I'm going to put up a clip, and then after that clip, I'm going to put up a picture. And I want everyone to pay attention to this because this is vitally important. Okay? In my opinion. Okay? It was at the start, just before this video. I'm going to put it up again at the end. And that is the quote from Benjamin Franklin. That anyone who would sacrifice their freedom for their safety, because that's the big argument here as to why they have to take away our rights to our 4th Amendment from unwarranted search and seizure. The reason they have to take it away is for our protection. And let's remember Ben Franklin's quote. Anyone who would sacrifice their freedom for their safety shall have and deserve neither.
It was passed in the wake of 9/11 and calls for new and vast powers for US intelligence agencies understandably had lots of backing. The reforms, known as the Patriot Act, according to President Bush, were designed to prevent another attack like the one on September 11th. It essentially gave organisations like the NSA more access to internet records, made it easier to tap phones, and made it easier to share intelligence information.
Today we take an essential step in defeating terrorism while protecting the constitutional rights of all Americans.
US politicians who penned the law knew that there was a fine line between the right to privacy and keeping American citizens safe. So a 5-year sunset clause was inserted into the act. It was routinely renewed until shocking revelations by Edward Snowden threw a giant spanner into the works.
They also found that they unreasonably intrude into the private lives of ordinary citizens, individuals who have never been suspected of any wrongdoing or criminal activity.
Since then, the mass surveillance debate has raged on, and the revelations revealed by Mr. Snowden brought into question how useful such widespread powers actually are. Snowden announced the Patriot Act was secretly being used to justify the collection of phone records from millions of Americans. But the expired law is likely to be replaced as early as this week with new legislation, the USA Freedom Act, as it's been claimed the US is at risk without such laws. The act has cross-party support and is backed by President Obama.
Terrorists like Al-Qaeda and ISIL aren't suddenly going to stop plotting against us at midnight tomorrow. And we shouldn't surrender the tools that help keep us safe. It would be irresponsible.
It would scale back the bulk collection of phone records by the NSA, but they would still be able to get the data from phone companies. Although some argue it doesn't go far enough in reining in the authorities, it would be the first rollback of surveillance in the US since 1978. That's possibly bad news for Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who wanted to simply renew the Patriot Act. He was strongly opposed on all sides, though, especially by his colleague Rand Paul, who's running for president on a largely libertarian agenda.
Despite the tech companies' assertions that they provide information on their customers only when required under law and not knowingly through a back door, the perception that they enabled the spying program has lingered. It's clear to every single tech company that this is affecting their bottom line.
There's a balance to be struck between protecting American citizens from potential terror suspects and protecting civil liberties and privacy concerns. So it looks like the Freedom Act may well have to be the answer.